One thing that has remained unchanged at Phoenix Contact since 1923 is our passion for technology. With new ideas, we turn challenges into opportunities and into solutions for the future. Phoenix Contact is a German family-owned company and global player. Thanks to our several development sites, 10 production sites and more than 50 worldwide sales subsidiaries, our solutions are always where our customers need them. The world is becoming more intelligent, more flexible, more digital. Today already, we're developing appropriate products and solutions. For example, web technologies and security mechanisms are already part and parcel of many of our products and manufacturing processes. Together with our customers and partners, we are helping to shape Industry 4.0, the intelligent production of tomorrow. Keeping in mind a sustainable use of resources and respecting the environment are priorities for us. Let's look ahead and shape the future together.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the second panel discussion of the fourth day of the Energy Security Forum, which is the crowning event in the cycle of more than 90 events in 2022 held by the Energy Club, the business community that brings together leading companies in the Ukrainian energy market and creates opportunities for communication between its stakeholders. And of course, we are very glad that we are joined by such authoritative international representation. And once again, I say that we are grateful to you for taking part and regard this as a sign of support for Ukraine in these harsh times. As far as harsh times are concerned, due to the complicated situation with the energy supply, we're holding the Energy Security Forum without online broadcast. Forum recordings will be available on YouTube. The forum partners are the Ukrainian Energy Exchange, the Nadra GeoInvest LLC, the Phoenix Contact LLC, and the government of Germany, because the event is supported by the German government as part of the project promoting energy efficiency and the implementation of the EU Energy Efficiency Directive in Ukraine, being implemented by the German government company GIZ. As the audience research shows, the optimum time span for an intervention is 7 minutes. However, I won't impose strict time limits on you because of the seriousness of and importance of the topic that we are going to discuss. And the topic today is hydrogen economy development in the European dimension. We were supposed to start with the head of the state Ukrainian Agency for Energy Efficiency, Valery Bezus, who was with us during the first panel discussion. However, there's no electricity supply where he was, and judging from the looks, I suppose he was in his agency at the moment. So you see the situation as it is. The government agency does not have electricity supply at the moment. If and when Mr. Bezus will be able to join us, I'll give him the mic. So far, I am glad and indeed honored to invite to speak Mr. Torsten Wöllert, who is the Minister Counsellor for Energy at the EU Delegation to Ukraine.
Yeah, дуже дякую. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to see you all at the event, even though yesterday was a very difficult day for Ukraine's energy system. And here in Kiev, where I am in Kiev now, we have now electricity, we have internet, but we still have no water. But we can do this without water, at least for some time.
What about heat in Wöllert? Because where I am, we have electricity, no water, no heat.
We have heat, so we are privileged, you know.
Good.
Yes, thank you very much. And especially, you know, for looking ahead in these difficult times on the future of the energy system and how to get there. We started in the European Union to look seriously at the future hydrogen economy a couple of years ago. And immediately when it became a very, let's say, well, much debated topic in the European Union, we also reached out to our partners internationally. That's part of the European Union strategy. And you may have seen that in part of the hydrogen strategy of the European Union, there's a specific reference to partners. And Ukraine is, I think, the only country which is really named there as a major potential partner for the European Union. So we have started to integrate our discussion and even our organizations in the hydrogen field. So it's not only in the European Union strategy, it's also that Ukrainian partners are involved in the platforms and fora that exist in the European Union on developing hydrogen. We have also a memorandum of strategic energy partnership with Ukraine, where also hydrogen features. And we are now working on a dedicated partnership on renewable gases, which essentially, hopefully, will be signed anytime soon. So that's the agreement when Commissioner Simpson was in Kiev and met with Minister Halushenko 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago already, so that we have a clear framework of cooperation on biomethane and on green hydrogen. And the hope is that this will stimulate the cooperation not only among public servants and public authorities, but also among businesses, so that there will be a framework for Ukrainian businesses to invest with their partners or without partners into producing these renewable gases, both for the domestic market and for the European Union market, because we see that there's a big need for importing these renewable gases, and it will be a big market. And we also hope that this will stimulate production in Ukraine, so that Ukraine can also develop its own market, so that this whole market integration, which is now becoming increasingly important in the general discussion of the energy markets, that this will be underpinned by real investments. And we had seen already on hydrogen that some of these partnerships started to develop before Russia's full-scale aggression now in February. So we had some talks about pilot projects, we had contacts between different companies, technology companies, for instance, Siemens was involved, but also gas traders who are now looking to develop new businesses based on renewable gases, based on green hydrogen. We also have in the pipeline, and it was essentially agreed we should have, well, we should do it now, but it was it was put on hold for the time being because of the aggression, to conduct an in-depth study, technical economic feasibility study on using part of Ukraine's gas network to transport hydrogen. To ensure that Ukraine's hydrogen network is linked to the new backbone that will be established in the European Union, which essentially what the part which is most relevant for Ukraine goes from the south of Germany, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Austria, all the way to Ukraine, so that the access of production in Ukraine to these markets will be as economically feasible, as easy as possible. And for that, of course, we also agreed with the Energy Ministry and the State Energy Efficiency Agency to work on facilitating the rules. I mean, a lot of groundwork is needed really have the market integration working smoothly. Now, of course, we are in a sort of hung position. We have not conducted for the time being the feasibility study on the gas pipeline network, what is needed to make part of it hydrogen ready. We also had agreed with Naftogaz to have a feasibility study on storing hydrogen in Ukraine, because part of Ukraine's gas storage system is not used at full capacity, and it could be used, but that depends on the result of the study, for hydrogen storage, so that Ukraine would become not only a hydrogen producer, but also a sort of hydrogen storer or a hydrogen hub, which could serve the national market, but also the regional market, including EU neighbors. So that is now a bit on hold. And of course, one of the big fundamentals to make it work is the production of renewable energy. And that, of course, now is, Ukraine made a big jump in developing renewable energy projects. They're mostly located where there's more sun and where there's more wind, so close to the Black Sea, the Azov Sea. And that, of course, is exactly now the problem, that the installations that are close to the Azov Sea are now in the either occupied areas or in the combat zones, so that it's they are not producing. And also to invest now in making them part of hydrogen projects is simply too early. We don't see anyone who would be able to predict anything in this area. So for the time being, as part of the these renewable gases partnership that we are about to establish, most likely most efforts on the practical side, on the business side, and also on the business supporting sides, for instance, about certification and these things, will probably be focused more on biomethane for the time being, bearing in mind that in the long run, hydrogen is a much bigger potential market and a much more high value market for producers in Ukraine. And maybe a last word on hydrogen production in Ukraine. We see a lot of discussion about different colors of hydrogen, and also about possible mixtures of hydrogen, for instance, with natural gas. So what the conviction of the European Commission is, and it's all in the documents, is that for a mixture of hydrogen with methane, this is probably, it may be in some niche applications a viable solution, because it allows you to transport hydrogen quickly with existing infrastructure. But it is not, there's no market for it. There is no use for it by end customers. So the clear direction, but I'm talking about under the control of, let's say, experts in the field, direction is really going towards pure hydrogen, and how to market it, how to certify it, how to transport it, etc. So that is the main focus. And on the colors of hydrogen, we think, and this has also been expressed by the Ukrainian Hydrogen Association, that the premium product in hydrogen will be green hydrogen. So you will simply get the best price in the European markets on green hydrogen. And because Ukraine has this potential to produce green hydrogen, probably this will be a very high value export product. Whereas for the decarbonization of industry in Ukraine, for instance, the Hydrogen Association suggested to also use nuclear power to produce hydrogen, but this would probably be less of an export product for Ukraine. So let me stop here. I have a lot of information about the hydrogen strategy in the EU, but I don't want to talk about things which may not be relevant now in the current situation here in Ukraine.
Thank you very much for this very relevant, concise, and thorough presentation at the beginning of our discussion. You may see some people in the background. That's because I also had to change my location in order to get access to the internet, and I'm now talking to you from the newsroom of my Hromadske Radio. I'm pretty sure that you will understand the circumstances. Okay, so Mr. Wöllert has spoken, and our next international contributor is going to be Ms. Silvia Martinez Romero. She is the Senior Energy Specialist from the World Bank Group.
Many thanks, Andriy, for your presentation, and it's an honor to be here today. At the World Bank, we stand ready to support Ukraine in the short term with restoration of the services, and we are working very closely with the government for that now. But we also think it is important to think on the future reconstruction, and hydrogen plays an important role in the energy security and in the decarbonization of the energy system in Ukraine. We think that at the World Bank, we see hydrogen as emerging as a very important opportunity to transform macro energy systems, and we are seeing also a very important increase in the interest from developing countries in trying to get into a hydrogen economy somehow, right? And so we are starting to work. We're already working with more than 20 countries to support different levels, at the strategic level with some pilots, and also now very recently on November 14, the bank launched a new partnership to promote private sector investments in hydrogen. It is called Hydrogen for Development Partnership, and it is. The purpose of this partnership is to put together financing, knowledge sharing, and capacity building to try to address the needs of developing countries to enable private sector investments and also allow for access to grants that are necessary for the development of hydrogen economy in the initial stages. With regard to Ukraine, the bank supported several studies before the war, and also we were in talks with gas TSO and also with Torsten and others to see how we could collaborate to evaluate the support of the hydrogen economy in the whole supply chain, from production to production, transportation, storage, and consumption. We also have done some very recent analysis also to see, as part of the Building Back Better strategy and the decarbonization strategy. The Building Back Better in Ukraine will have to be aligned with European strategy, and it will have to enable decarbonization, zero carbon economy by 2060 or before. So we have done some modeling to evaluate what will be what is going to be the demand growth, assuming taking into account that the demand has substantially reduced during the war, but with some assumptions, and then how the demand will recover, likely shortly after the war, the demand will recover in the next year or two, and then it will continue to grow. And taking that assumption into account, then we look what would be the investments that Ukraine will need to make to ensure a reliable energy system, but also decarbonize energy system until in 2060. And hydrogen and other derivatives and also other green gases play an important role on this. Of course, in the very short term, we see that maybe investments could start in 2030, but then and production could be below. Could be low in the initial stages, but it will have to grow substantially, almost exponentially, to 2060, in order to achieve an energy system that would be fully decarbonized by then. And also we had collaborated with USAID on this roadmap for hydrogen development, and we agree with them in many, almost all the assumptions. We have commented on those. For example, we think that in the very short term, as Torsten have indicated, maybe the easiest or the lower hanging fruit for to enable some production in Ukraine of hydrogen, clean hydrogen, will be to use maybe excess power from nuclear. So you will need to import gas to meet the local hydrogen demand, because hydrogen is an input that is required for production of fertilizers and steel, and Ukraine exports fertilizers and steel to European Union, and in order to eliminate the impact of CBAM on those exports, I think having somehow decarbonized production of these exports would be very, very good for Ukraine. But of course, also in the midterm, green hydrogen will need to develop for exports, because it is probably, I mean, the price of clean hydrogen will probably not have the same level as green hydrogen, and for that, Ukraine will need to sort out the investment issues on renewable energy, maybe achieve the financial sustainability of the energy sector that will then enable this further ramp up of renewable investments in the midterm. And then also in the long term, Ukraine will need to decarbonize their own production of gas, maybe what we call blue hydrogen. Maybe once the prices of carbon capture and storage are low enough, this could be also part of the path. But in addition to hydrogen, we want to emphasize that there are also other green gases that will play an important role, and that could be used in different, for different demand points, like biomethane or synthetic methane combined with carbon capture and storage. And we see that those can play maybe a very important role also in the initial years, not till 2040. Even more than hydrogen, because Ukraine has important potential to develop biomethane. So I think, this is overall some thoughts. We look forward to support Ukraine on the development of this hydrogen strategy in collaboration with our development partners in the best possible way. We also had put on hold some of the activities we had planned because of, now we are very focused on very short-term support, but of course, I think we think that in order to understand better what would be the best investments in the short term for the hydrogen economy, we need to do some additional research on what would be the demand in the short term, how we can maybe stimulate that demand after the war, and also create some pilots. We have thought, we hear about these clusters close to the demand centers where some pilots for new pink hydrogen or green hydrogen could be developed to really pave the way for other investments in the future. And then maybe in the short term, grants will be very much needed to develop these initial pilots, and we hope that to be able to support that soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for bringing this dimension to our discussion about the European dimension. And now it's time to call to the mic Mr. Philipp Speiser, who is the Director of Energy Transition at Air Liquide, Germany. And I noticed that he has reacted positively to something that Torsten Wöllert said. So are you with us, Mr. Speiser? Yes. And yes, everyone, sir. Feel free to react with your thumbs up to what Mr. Speiser will be saying.
Indeed, I was raising my thumbs up for the speech of Torsten Wöllert, because there's a lot of things that he said that I wholeheartedly agree, and I will actually try to substantiate a little bit. Building on the last forum and conversation that we had, I was thinking to bring you one view from, let's say, the international perspective outside of Ukraine. One example how a successful integrated hydrogen project with different things along the value chain work, and then take a bit of a look at the European Backbone initiative that Torsten mentioned. So here, I just wanted to give everyone a bit of a flavor on the kind of activities we're seeing on a global level. The figures here, substantial investment, a lot of projects kicked off. This is actually increasing since the United States. have given a very strong incentive for hydrogen-related projects with the Inflation Reduction Act. So the number of dots on the US soil is actually much higher now than it was probably a few weeks and months ago. But what you see is that there's a different clustering, right? There's a number of gigascale production projects without necessarily the large-scale industrial use or the usage in transport at the same place. You can see that in South America, in Australia, in the Middle East. And then you have a lot of, industrial use, integrated economy projects, transport projects in Europe, in the US and Asia. And so we're seeing basically, similar to some of the current fossil environment, a disconnect between where the energy is produced and where it's used, right? Nevertheless, I agree with Silvia before that we should not only focus on the export side, but also keep in mind that Ukraine is actually providing the world markets with a lot of high value products like fertilizer or steel. And to me, rebuilding the steel industry based on green hydrogen could be one of the enablers to basically, give a nucleus for the Ukraine hydrogen economy, and then use that to scale for exports. So this is one of the examples that I wanted to show. So this is a project where Liquide is not in the driving seat. We're an affiliated organization. That's a project, part of the German National Hydrogen Strategy in the northwest of Germany. And what you see here is that they basically try to integrate different levels of the value chain in one combined project. So you see that there is a renewable power and an electrolyzer production located in an existing power plant in Lingen, close to a refining customer, which is typically one of the first users of renewable hydrogen because they are already a hydrogen consumer, similar to fertilizer production, for instance. But you also have a pipeline connection to the industrial clusters in the Ruhr area and in the middle of Germany, which is typically steel and chemicals, right? So you're basically connecting them with pipelines. And this is something that Torsten mentioned as well, they're integrating cavern storage from the beginning, because one of the downsides of hydrogen is the intermittent character of its production when it's produced with green hydrogen, so with green electricity. So storage and integrating storage into a concept, to me, is one of the key beneficiaries in order to basically then offer a continuous supply of hydrogen that can be then very attractive for industrial customers, right? So this is one of the things, and you see the numbers of the years, that this doesn't happen at once, but it's also a phased approach with a nucleus in 2024 and then 25, 26, and then later on envision 2030. And these kind of like thinking about starting from existing industrial usage, then going over pipeline transporting, adding new users, adding storage, and then integrating it in a pipeline concept, I think is a very good use case to be replicated in for instance, Ukraine. And then this is the point that where I raised my thumb. So obviously, you're well aware about the European H2 Backbone Initiative. The way we are perceiving the projects going on is that there's a lot of activities in the Benelux, Rotterdam and Antwerp, the ports especially, as well in Hamburg. So there will be a lot of energy and a lot of hydrogen coming from, let's say, the north and west, but it will in the beginning stay a lot in the north and the west of Europe. So you have an issue for those consumers that are in the southeastern part, both of Germany, but also of Europe. So the southern part of Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, Hungary. And here the eastern route is going to be more important to supply then. And when we match that with industrial production, you see that there are a lot of consumers in the south of Poland, in the Silesia and Krakow region. There's really a lot of industrial and transport needs in the south and southeast of Germany, namely Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. And so basically this connection from the east, to me, will be a very important point. And then when you see the 2040 picture, right, that's a bit the more long-term view, there's a numerous number of connections that basically feed into these corridors. And if Ukraine is able to basically position themselves as the supplier for these regions, then they can scale up the production capacity accordingly. And the last word is also, I believe that for the export, the premium product, as Torsten Wöllert mentioned it, is the one that is going to be the most attractive, which is green additional hydrogen that is then compliant with the different renewable energy directives that are being put forward now, because then it's usable for industry purposes. It is usable for mobility purposes, which I believe is going to be a very growing demand as well. So we're foreseeing inside of Air Liquide that by 2050, 2060, the industry demand might be saturated, but mobility is still a growing demand, especially when it enters into aviation and into maritime sector. And so, you know, if you're rebuilding something, looking already for the premium product and being able to capture the highest value would be probably the way to look for. And that's my humble view on the topic. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speiser. The only reason why I did not raise the thumb is because it is physically exacting to hold the thumb up during the entire speech. I think that everybody appreciated your input, and now we are going to hear from Mr. Jonas Moberg. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Green Hydrogen Organization.
Andriy, thank you so much, and it's great to join you all here. And I, of course, too, in deep awe of the resilience and the determination, not just of the Ukrainian people, not just to cope with the short term, but to be able to look at the longer term things that needs to happen. And we've had many conversations like this one with friends at Dixie Group and elsewhere, and it's just extraordinary to see. So Andriy, thank you. I think that Torsten, Silvia, and Philipp and I are largely approaching this from more or less the same perspective, and that's also wonderful to hear. The Green Hydrogen Organization is a group of companies that multi-stakeholder. We have civil society on our board, and we work very closely with a wide range of governments, for example, the German one. And one of the companies that we work with is founded by, I should also, for transparency's sake, say, is founded by Andrew Forrest, who I work closely with, and who you may have seen have committed in the region of $700 million into investments in Ukraine. Recently made that clear. Now, we have at the Green Hydrogen Organization, we commissioned a study of the potential of renewable green hydrogen economy and ammonia in Ukraine earlier this year. And I think, you know, it's clear to everyone that there is both extraordinary opportunities to produce green hydrogen and green ammonia, and also a potential very significant market, not just as Philipp said, for export, but also, of course, domestically. And here again, as Philipp said, steel, yes, but I would particularly highlight, of course, the green hydrogen for green ammonia to fertilizer. That is an extraordinary opportunity. that we have for so many reasons we just need to grasp. A couple of very big pointers. I think we need to stop talking about hydrogen as one commodity. Hydrogen with 11 kilos of CO2 emissions per 1 kilo hydrogen is not that great for the world. And that is just about all hydrogen that we have today. The fact is that we have, there's virtually no low carbon fossil fuel based hydrogen. There are a couple of projects underway in Northern Europe, but there is virtually no blue hydrogen being produced or being likely to be produced anytime soon. Therefore, I think we need to focus on green hydrogen. I accept Torsten's point that there might be a role also for nuclear, not least in the Ukrainian context. So green with slants of pink. But let's not talk about hydrogen in a universal sense. What we're also very clear about is this is not creating a new commodity economy. This is new industrial clusters. It's a new supply chain. And the supply chain and industrial clusters that we're going to see for renewable hydrogen are going to be very different from fossil fuel-based ones. Doesn't mean that you're not going to use the pipeline network, not least in countries like Ukraine. And is there one slight area where I might disagree with Torsten, is that I actually think that there is a demand also for blended products, actually already now in the European context. And I think that we should be aware of that as well. So my first point is really there is both domestically and on the export side huge demand for the products from Ukraine. And there are, of course, huge opportunities to produce. And as Torsten made clear, of course, one of the challenges is that, as we all know, the renewable energy potential is the highest in some of the areas that are currently most difficult to work with or even occupied. So there are some challenges on that side. Now, I guess the key question is, how do we, as enablers, because that is what many of us around this table are, how do we make things happen faster and so on? But let me therefore look very briefly at some of the current challenges. I think firstly, incredibly welcome that the World Bank and EU have been supporting the development of the national strategy. Now, recognizing that the government, that there are obvious reasons for it to be delayed, we supporters of the government can all help in lifting strategy over the line. So that would be a first point that I would have. Now, that strategy needs, I think, to focus on two areas. The first is obviously the renewable energy regulatory situation, both in terms of the replacement of the feed-in tariffs, but there are also a number of other areas where we desperately need a progressive, modern regulatory and approvals process in Ukraine. And also, of course, one of the key things, let's be honest with ourselves, up until before the invasion, governance or lack of governance was a major issue here. We now have an opportunity to reset on that aspect and make sure that we introduce high degrees of transparency and reporting, meaning that we create investment in a new form of reliable investment climate when it comes to the renewable energy space. So using the need to put the strategy into place, use that to enhance and put a new regulatory situation in place for the renewable energy production. I think is going to be an absolute key. Now, then it comes to some of the green hydrogen and green ammonia. And here, I think it is important that the strategy and the government essentially sets out some very strong demand signals. And not least on the green ammonia side, we know, of course, that the competition from gray ammonia, not least in an economy like the Ukrainian one, with its agricultural base, is going to be very big. And here, I guess, I'm hopeful that Torsten and his colleagues works very closely with the Ukrainian government in supporting those demand signals. And as Philipp said, the US government has taken an extraordinary step through the Inflation Reduction Act. For those of you who don't follow it, up to $3 of tax credit per kilo of hydrogen. That is currently what the American tax man is offering the industry. Now, to give a sense of that figure, a number of actors think that they will be able to produce renewable green hydrogen at a cost of maybe $2 to $3 in the next 5, 6, 8 years. In other words, if there is a possibility to soon be able to produce green hydrogen in the United States almost for free. And we should, the EU, we should look at how can we help the Ukrainian government to come up with terms and conditions that makes use of its potential and its market to come up with conditions that are similarly favorable. And I really do think that we have, this is an area that ought to be a sort of test case for how we really support the Ukrainian government in terms of creating this market. And I would have thought that such incentive schemes ought to, as I've indicated, be particularly focused on the green ammonia side and the domestic production of green fertilizers. So I think that is a particular area. And Andrei, if I may, just one last comment is that in terms of devising such a scheme, which I hope we will be able to propose through the strategy development, is that the multilateral development banks, like the World Bank, but also its European sisters, we are likely to not just provide grant money for pilot projects, because frankly, we don't have time for pilot projects. To a larger extent, it is a matter of very, very large scale de-risking of sovereign risk and doing that at blended concession returns. And that is a particular area that I hope we'll be able to focus a little bit on as we make this happen in Ukraine. So thank you very much, everyone. And I really appreciate being part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moberg. We appreciate your input too, especially as it paid attention to several aspects that haven't been touched upon yet within this discussion. And now the time comes to invite to speak our Ukrainian participants. And the first is going to be Olga Pavlyuk. She is Deputy Director of the Innovative Projects Implementation Department at Ukrhydroenergo.
Dear colleagues, thank you for invitation to this forum. I would like to present briefly our company's intentions in the subject of the hydrogen production. As you probably could have heard, our company is interested now to implement the pilot green hydrogen production project using the company's capacity of water reservoirs, using the technology of the water electrolysis to have the implementing of the project with a scale up to 1 megawatt of green hydrogen on the site of hydropower plant in Zaporizhia, Dnipro HPP. And we are working on this project very tightly with our European colleagues already. We have technical design prepared, and at the moment, during this current circumstances in the country, there are some pauses, of course, but we are hoping that this pilot project will be implemented, and it will allow us to produce this hydrogen and storage at the site. Of course, it's not so big scope, but it could help at least could be used as a fuel for cars, for buses, trains, as per technical calculations. And this project is planned to be implemented under our own financing, but maybe we will also attract some grants. It's not so big project, it's up to 6 million euros in estimated cost. And the other big goal for our company in the perspective is larger scale green hydrogen production projects up to 100 megawatt using our facilities. And of course, it would be needed to attract investments for this. We have a good experience working with the international financial organizations, so I think we will study the possibilities to attract the loans, grants, and so on. So this could be a more cost, like 400 up to 600 million euros, but it's in perspective. Of course, it will be dependent on the circumstances and situation in the country and at our sites. This is briefly what we can present for you. For implementation of such projects, it is also needed to be specified the regulatory policy in the country, the market, and the transportation, and so on. We are working on this. So we are working with Andriy's company and MAN Energy Solutions, and our specialists have visited some sites in Europe where they could see the similar technologies. So we're not stopping, and I hope we will be successful in this pilot project in the country, and then after the victory, we will implement the bigger scale project. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your intervention, which was very practical and up to the point. And this is unquestionably the added value that it holds. And now I am pleased to invite to speak Mr. Mykola Kadenskyi, who is head of Network Development Department of the Ukrainian GTS operator.
I will skip slides and presentations. Today I made it a lot of time, so everyone knows that GTS of Ukraine have an intention to unlock potential of Ukrainian hydrogen to provide opportunity for future export to EU to support recovery intention. So now we are on the step of hydrogen readiness assessment, and for sure we are looking for grant funding for such a big project, which will help for us to figure out how the current state of infrastructure is fitted with hydrogen requirements transportation. So far, Torsten, nice to see you, and I hope we can do something next year. It's a great pleasure to me to participate and to see everyone. I will leave my contacts here in a chat to if someone want to discuss projects, intentions, some ideas with pipeline operator who want to get access to the grid, who want to get information from us. Також цікаво було поспілкуватися з Укргідроенерго, можливо, десь буде необхідність поспівпрацювати, можливо, на пілотних проєктах, можливо, вам
Mr. Kadenskyi, as a courtesy to our foreign participants, please.
Okay, so if our colleagues from Hydroenergy would like to cooperate and they will need some pipes for their pilot projects to connect supply with demand, we can help and join actually to implement as a little scale pilot project to test our pipes on the site of production for hydrogen readiness. Everyone, I wish to stay safe and healthy during this winter. We will win. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. A very apt expression, pipes to connect supply and demand. And we will, of course, remember Mr. Kadenskyi's words not only for this, but also for the promise to put his contacts in our chat, as, for instance, without promising, Jonas Moberg did, and good. And I see that Mr. Kadenskyi has kept up to his word. And Torsten Wöllert wants to add something. You're welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask our colleagues, our Ukrainian colleagues, when you think about the reconstruction after the war, it is also about the re-establishment of industry in Ukraine, because a lot needs to be modernized, it needs to be rethought. And of course, we discussed the whole question of the hydrogen economy today, and that has a number of implications. So, for instance, are there plans to produce, let's say, based on green hydrogen fertilizers? What would be the right infrastructure for this? What is the right location for this? What kind of partners are needed for this? And concretely, I remember before the full-scale invasion, there were talks also, and I think Naftogaz was also involved, to consider creating a sort of hydrogen cluster in the Odessa region. I don't know if this is still being discussed, or if there are some plans in the reconstruction context that this may be changed. And I fully agree that we should have a sort of expert group, not a formal working group, but just a group of experts who have the opportunity to exchange these ideas and to see what kind of industrial development based on hydrogen in Ukraine is being discussed, is being proposed, so that we can also see who would be interested in investing there. And I mean, we have Silvia from the World Bank here. We have industry people here. I think this would be a very good consortium of interested people to try to promote the hydrogen economy also inside Ukraine as part of the reconstruction, because I'm fairly optimistic that for the reconstruction, Ukraine will have sufficient investment resources, but only if the investors understand the economic potential and the, let's say, the value of it. And this could be one of the things that experts could now develop, so that once the whole framework for reconstruction is more or less understood, that this is a priority project for investors, be it international banks, be it private investors, be it national, be it international. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wöllert. If any of the Ukrainian participants wants to say something on what Mr. Wöllert has touched upon, you're welcome. Anyway, I think that the range of issues touched upon in this discussion was rather impressive. The range of approaches demonstrated also was from theory to practice, and the poignant and important deep-going questions that Torsten Wöllert asked in his final remarks are to be answered as soon as possible. And of course, when we speak of Odessa region or some other regions of Ukraine in the south of Ukraine, we understand that they've been subject not only to airstrikes, but also to ground attacks. Well, not Odessa, thanks God, but Mykola and Kherson. You all know this. And this is felt in your interventions today. This is felt in the attention that you pay to the situation in Ukraine, and to discussing now what has to be done in the future. I thank you very much. I just want to remind of one thing, that today there will be a charitable auction organized by the Ukrainian Energy Exchange, the Association of Gas Traders, the All Ukrainian Energy Assembly and Energy Club business community. 4 exclusive lots will be offered for the auction, and all the proceeds will be transferred for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. So we are through with the second discussion of the 4th day of the Energy Security Forum. Thank you very much. Keep up your very important and good work. Goodbye.
An efficient and intelligent traffic infrastructure will enable all kinds of connections between the other sectors. The comprehensive digitalization and automation of the sector infrastructure will open up enormous potential for efficiency increases. Road, rail, and water traffic will flow faster and more smoothly. This saves time and energy, and it's good for the climate. At the same time, the energy requirement of the smart transportation infrastructure itself will also be controlled intelligently and reduced massively overall.